All right. Hello. Welcome in to Believe in Steelers, powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. I'm Jarrett Bailey here with you as always, getting you set for Steelers Bills in week 13. The Bills 3-point favorites according to FanDuel. And it's a 425 game. It's the Nance and Romo game. And I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure this is the first time the Steelers have played at 4 o'clock this year. I might be wrong, but I cannot recall if they have played in the 4 o'clock window, who it was against. And yeah, I think it's the first time that they've played in the 4 o'clock window this year. If I'm wrong, feel free to point it out in the comments. But if you're watching, please be sure to subscribe. If you're listening as a podcast, leave a comment, leave a review, do all that fun stuff. Yeah, Pittsburgh, 6-5. Hosting Buffalo, who is 7-4. They currently hold the final wild card spot in the AFC playoffs. And we've talked about how crazy the AFC playoffs currently are and continue to be. All three wild card teams at the moment are 7-4. The Bills are currently the last wild card seed, holding the 7th spot. New England, their division rival, 10-2 right now, best record in the NFL, holding the #1 seed in the AFC. So Buffalo, as well as Pittsburgh, but Buffalo playing for, to stay within reach of the Patriots. If they lose this game, they're 7-5. And really, we really start to talk about, all right, can they, realistically come back in the AFC East? Right now they're still within striking distance. They have another game against New England. So this game very much, a big deal for Buffalo, who can't really afford too many more losses either. For Pittsburgh, if they lose, you really start to question, okay, is the season done? And a lot of people, myself included, were doing that after the loss to the Bears, because you look at the schedule that they have left. Buffalo on Sunday. You go on the road to Detroit. And I know that Detroit's kind of looked up and down, but that's still a team filled with talent that I don't think the Steelers can really go tick for tack with. Both games against Baltimore yet as well. At least one of those is probably a loss. Home game against Miami on Monday night, that feels like the surest, like if we're looking at all the games, that's the closest one where you can pencil in a win. And even then, it's not a guarantee. Strange things happen. And the Steelers aren't in position to just say, okay, yeah, we'll pencil that in as a win against the Dolphins on Monday night. But sticking with the Bills game here, 3-point favorites are the Bills, according to FanDuel. No Deion Dawkins, the left tackle for the Bills. No Spencer Brown, right tackle for the Bills. And so it's funny because, if you follow me for any amount of time, especially on Twitter, at JBaileyNFL, you know that, I cover the Bills pretty closely over at the Sporting News. I'm, pretty loud and vocal about Josh Allen being my favorite player in the NFL. And so, this game kills two birds with one stone for me. I don't got to watch two games at the same time. I can keep my eye on one screen. And I know a lot of people are going to give me crap if they're just finding that out. How can you be a Steelers fan and your favorite players on another team? Well, the Steelers haven't really given me a lot to root for over the past decade or so, or half decade or so. Ben was my favorite player. Probably always going to be my all-time favorite player, but it's hard to watch Josh and not see a little bit of Ben. So maybe that's why, he's become my favorite quarterback, my favorite player to watch. So, in looking at this game in particular, Steelers fans say, all right, Deion Dawkins gone, Spencer Brown gone. This could be a game where TJ Watt, Nick Herbig kind of tee off. But as I and a lot of other Steelers fans will tell you, hey, this is one of those games where it feels like they should take over. And for whatever reason, I think it's Ryan Van Denmark, one of the backup tackles. He'll lock down Herbig or Watt all day. They'll get maybe a sack or two on Josh, and the pass rush will be kind of non-existent. Steelers are keen to have games like that, especially, remember at the beginning of the year where they couldn't get to Justin Fields. I think the only sack in that game was Alex Highsmith getting to Justin. Couldn't really do much, throughout the first few weeks of the season, really. And so there's reasonable doubts from Steelers fans. You look at the other side of the aisle, Bills fans are freaking out. Oh, no Deion Dawkins, no Spencer Brown. Josh is dealing with something with his elbow. They're kind of freaking out that TJ Watt and Nick Herbig are going to kind of wreak havoc in this game. Sincerely, I've kind of surrendered myself to not having high expectations. What's Vince Vaughn say in Dodgeball? If you don't, set expectations too high, then it's hard to be disappointed. That's where I'm at with Pittsburgh. I'm not expecting them to go out and beat Buffalo. I'm sure few people are expecting that, but I surely am not. And while the Bills have had some struggles themselves, outside of Josh Allen and James Cook, there's no one on that roster that scares you. Khalil Shakir, maybe, but even so, Joe Brady, the Bills' offensive coordinator, has turned Khalil Shakir into a screen merchant more than anything. I think the receiver that scares you the most if you're Pittsburgh is Gabe Davis, because we all remember what Gabe Davis did to them in 2022, where he had damn near 200 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns, one of them being a 97-yarder, and that was in Kenny Pickett's first career start. By the way, and I'm pretty sure this is still true, the only 300-yard game that Kenny Pickett had as a Steeler was that game. His first career start, 38-3 loss to Buffalo. And I'm fairly certain that it's his only 300-yard game as a Steeler. And, as a whole, he didn't throw for one with Philadelphia. So I'm pretty sure that's his only 300-yard game. Neither here nor there, just a fun little snippet. And while there's not many things that can hurt you if you're the Steelers looking at the Bills, Pittsburgh has let far less, superior teams hurt them this year. We saw what the Jets did to them in week 1. They put up 32. I saw Kevin Adams of the Steel Here podcast brought up this stat. The Steelers defense this season has already allowed more points than the 2008 defense did. And they're only 11 games into the season. So in 6 fewer games than what the 2008 defense played, the Steelers of 2025 have already allowed more points. I don't care how historically good that defense was to allow more points and over a month and a half fewer games. It's inexcusable, especially when all we heard about this defense coming into the year is, historic. And they've just been not good. They've had their moments, against Cleveland, where they only allowed 9 points. They've, been opportunistic with takeaways like they were against Cincinnati in the second matchup. But by and large, the defense hasn't been good. The rush defense has been very sporadic and very volatile. And that's why I think that the pass rush largely isn't going to be that big of a factor, because this feels like a big James Cook game. If I'm Buffalo right now, I'm saying, all right, my 2 tackles are down. Josh got beat to hell against the Texans, suffered a career-high 8 sacks. The last thing that I want to do is put him in harm's way. Now, that's not to say you're not going to throw the ball at all. Obviously, that's, just not going to happen. But I fully expect Buffalo to just hammer James Cook all game. They are 12-2 in James Cook's career when he rushes for over 100 yards. And against the Steelers defense, you can certainly do that. So I expect a healthy dose of James Cook. And if you're looking at, player prop bets for this game, if you're kind of in the middle or just in general, if we're looking at rushing attempts, James Cook over under is 17.5. I feel like it's going to be a heavy James Cook game. They'll work in a little bit of Ty Johnson, who's kind of come alive recently for the Bills. So I know a lot of Steelers fans are hoping to see a big TJ Watt game, a big Nick Herbig game with both tackles down for the Bills. And look, they very well may each get, a sack apiece, but I don't expect this to be, what the Browns were doing to the Raiders last week, where they get 10 sacks. Because I don't think that Buffalo is going to put Josh in that situation. Like, this is a defense, this is a team where you look across the aisle at the Steelers, you say, we don't need, if we play 80% of our best football, we will beat them. That's what I think that if the Bills are really honest with themselves right now, they say if we play about 3/4 of our best football, we'll beat the Steelers. We don't need to go scorched earth. We shouldn't need Josh Allen to put up 350 yards to beat this team. That's just the fact of it right now. The Bears beat them when Caleb Williams completed damn near less than 50% of his passes. Like, Josh doesn't need to be superhuman in order for the Steelers to lose this game. He has been against Pittsburgh in the past. And we were talking about that 2022 game where he went scorched earth, the playoff game in 2023. The only game that he's lost to Pittsburgh was week 1 in 2021. And even then, in that game, it required a blocked punt by Miles Killebrew, which I believe Ulysses Gilbert scored on. A Ulysses Gilbert shout out on the pod today. So Josh, in his career against Pittsburgh, the Steelers against Josh Allen, including playoffs, they're 1-4. He has had their number. And this game is a little bit different, but I fully expect Buffalo to just lean into James Cook. I think it could be very similar. There was a game in, I believe it was 2023, fresh off of the Bills firing their old offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey. They played Dallas. And Dallas was very good. They won 12 games that year. But in that game, Josh Allen only threw the ball 15 times, went 7 of 15 because James Cook was just running it down Dallas's throat all day. Had over, I believe, 200 yards on the ground, and they were just incredibly efficient in the run game where Josh didn't need to throw the ball a lot. Do I think he'll throw more than 15 times? Yeah, probably. But I think it's going to be a similar mindset there where, hey, if we can keep TJ Watt out of the game, then let's do that. And we've seen teams do that all year against Pittsburgh. Hey, where's 90? All right, run it to the other side. If they can run it effectively on early downs, then that's what they're going to do. Especially, again, because both tackles down for Buffalo. I think that they're really just going to lean into James Cook. So we've talked a lot about what Buffalo is going to do offensively, at least what I think they're going to do. Defensively, this isn't the Steelers can do the exact same thing. Bills' defense is god-awful against the run. They've allowed 190 or more yards 3 times this season. They cannot stop the run. And if you're the Steelers, hey, that gives you an opportunity to live in jumbo, which they've loved doing so far, whether it's 13 personnel, putting Spencer Anderson in there as the swing tackle. Now, they will be without Broderick Jones this week, so Andrews Pete will start at left tackle. God only knows what that's going to look like. All respect to Andrews Pete. He's been a Pro Bowler in this league before. He's been a very good guard in this league before. Putting him at left tackle, man, I just don't know how this is going to look. The Bills don't have like an S-tier pass rusher. Greg Rousseau's fine. Joey Bosa is past his prime. He's not bad by any means, but he's not, this isn't a Myles Garrett that they have on the other side where you're going to be like, oh my God, Andrews Pete against Myles Garrett. It's not Micah Parsons on the other side. So they get a little bit of a break in that regard. But still, when you're starting Andrews Pete at left tackle, Broderick suffering the neck injury. Credit to Broderick, by the way, he's had a pretty solid season. And I would expect him to pick up his 5th-year option. So when you're starting left tackles out and you're putting in a veteran who usually plays guard, there's going to be some issues. I would expect heavy runs to the right side behind Mason McCormick and Troy Faltanu. And if it's going to the left side, I expect a lot of pulling, a lot of, hey, Spencer Anderson lining up in the offset eye as a fullback. So I expect both teams to play pretty similar here, where they aren't looking to air it out because none of them have dynamic passing attacks. But what each of them do have are pretty solid run games. The Steelers, at their best this season, were a top 10 efficient offense. And that was in large part due to Jaylen Warren having, a solid output of games. Kenneth Gainwell in a supporting role as well. And Kenneth Gainwell, I know that we've all been kind of scratching our heads about his usage compared to Jaylen Warren's, but he's played well. And so I fully expect this to be a run-heavy game on both sides where both teams just try to play clock possession, keep each of their respective defenses off the field, rather than what we've seen before from Buffalo, where it's just air it out, air it out, air it out. They just don't have the pieces to do that. Ever since they got rid of Stephon Diggs, they haven't been able to replace that. And so that's kind of a good thing if you're the Steelers. You don't necessarily have to worry about that. However, Gabe Davis is playing in this game, and I've already talked about Gabe Davis, the game that he had back in 2023 against Pittsburgh, where he just carved them up. So a Gabe Davis anytime touchdown isn't out of the question. I wonder what the odds are for that. I'm actually going to get that pulled up real quick just for, my bettors who are watching this show. Anytime touchdown in this game for Gabe Davis is sitting at plus 330. They do get Dalton Kincaid back. That's something to watch in the passing game. Peyton Wilson, Patrick Queen going to need to be on their P's and Q's covering him, because when Dalton Kincaid's been healthy this year, he's been awesome. But you look at the rest of the receiving core for the Bills. Like I said, Khalil Shakir, they've really neutered what he's done, and they don't use him downfield. Josh Palmer, they signed him to a big contract this offseason, hasn't done anything. Keon Coleman's been a healthy scratch for 2 weeks because of his attitude, and he's just not good. It's from a pure passing perspective, when it comes to receivers, I don't think there's going to be a ton for the Steelers to worry about. However, whenever you're facing Josh Allen, there's always going to be that worry of all right, what's he going to do? He's the defending MVP for a reason. You can make the argument right now he's the best quarterback in the sport. Whenever you got a guy like that under center, there's nothing guaranteed. So, could this be the week that Khalil Shakir pops off? Maybe. Could it be the week where Gabe Davis goes for 8 catches and $140? Maybe. But the Steelers' defense and their secondary, their job is to prevent this from being that week. And with all the money that they've put into that unit, and we've talked about it all season, mostly in a negative light, talking about how is this big money defense, the most expensive defense in football, so bad. Well, you're at home. You're facing a bad receiving core. Yeah, Josh Allen's good, but he's missing both of his starting tackles. Go out and play well. And offensively for the Steelers, the Bills' defense isn't good. You can run on them. That's what the Steelers want to do offensively, is run the ball. So run it. Steelers don't really have an identity offensively right now. They want it to be a power run team. They want it to be what Arthur Smith was with Tennessee. Pound the ball, set up second and third and shorts, play action deep balls. Or play action in breaking routes where there's a lot of space. They can do that against Buffalo because Buffalo's defense just isn't very good. Now, we'll find out soon enough whether they do, but there will be opportunities to take advantage of here against the Bills. There's been a lot of comparisons to Sean McDermott and Mike Tomlin, and I think that they're fair comparisons to make, where I think we've already seen the best that the Bills are going to be with Sean McDermott under the headset. We've certainly seen the best the Steelers are going to be with Mike Tomlin under the headset. Obviously, they were teammates at William & Mary or whatever, so they got a good relationship. But there's a lot of similarities with Buffalo and Pittsburgh in terms of, hey, you might need new head coaches. Both fan bases have been very, very vocal about wanting change. For Buffalo, they've gotten very close to the Super Bowl and keep falling short. For Pittsburgh, they haven't won a playoff game in 8 years. Any other coach wouldn't survive that. But I'm looking forward to it. Now, you might be I know that on the Monday following the Bears loss, it wasn't very much a recap as much as it was just a therapy session, not just for me, but for all of us. And, today I'm in a chipper mood. I really am. I had a great Thanksgiving. I hope that you did too. Me and my girlfriend hosted for the first time. That was exciting. Went Black Friday shopping yesterday. It was beautiful. It's cold, a little bit of flurries, but it wasn't brutal. It wasn't horrible. It was just I had a perfect 2 days. So I'm pretty chipper right now. And like I said, I've surrendered to the fact that this team just isn't, it's what it's been for the past half decade. It's not New York Jets terrible, but it's irrelevant. I'm allowing myself to surrender to that mindset before December so I don't get my hopes up. I went into the season with high hopes. I'm still going to root for it. lifelong fan, but I'm also going to point out what's blatantly obvious. And it's that this team just isn't good. They're not the Titans. They're not the Jets. Well, they're sure as hell not the Lions. They're not the Rams. They're not the upper echelon teams of the NFL either, which is what they've been forever. They've just been stuck in the middle. And like I said, on Monday, it was a very, a half hour long just vent session where, a lot of things got aired out. And today, I'm going to be cheerful because I had a great Thanksgiving, had a good Black Friday, and I don't have any expectations going into this game. I'll be perfectly honest with you guys. I fully expect the Bills to win. It may not be, like a 20-point blowout. I don't think the result's ever going to be in doubt, though. I think Buffalo wins. I think it's by, like I said, the Bills are only 3-point favorites. That's probably my favorite bet of the week from an unbiased lens is Buffalo -3. If you want to buy a half point, just in case it's decided by a field goal, go to 2.5. But I think the Bills are winning. I'd be shocked if they didn't. And it's just the Steelers, man. Like, we see this collapse every year. Or they start off pretty strong, and then they fall apart. This year, the collapse just came a little bit sooner than it usually does. Usually it happens after Thanksgiving. We got it a couple weeks ahead of Thanksgiving this time. So I expect Buffalo to win. If you want me to put a score prediction on it, I'll say 30-22, 30-23. Like I said, I don't think it's going to be a 20-point blowout. I think it'll be somewhat similar to maybe like the Green Bay game in the second half, where like the Steelers get a late touchdown and it makes the score look a little bit closer than what it actually was. I don't think the result's ever going to be in doubt. I think Buffalo wins. Steelers go to 6-6. They currently hold the first spot in the AFC North because Cincinnati beat Baltimore on Thursday night. The sicko in me would love to see the Bengals win out and win the division just because I think that would be funny. Look, the Steelers could still win the division because the rest of the division is just bad. But, this isn't a team that's making a run. So I expect Buffalo to win, which would put Pittsburgh at 6-6. And I believe, depending on what happens with Houston, if they win and get to 7-5, they would still be that first team out. But if the Steelers win and Houston loses, I believe it puts Pittsburgh as the first team out. So, the worst case scenario, by the end of the weekend, the Steelers will be the 9 seed. And then after that, they go to Baltimore. If they lose to Baltimore, I get to 6-7. You still got a date with the Lions in Detroit, game against Miami at home, and then you close out with the Ravens at home. Like, yeah, you can still hold on to a 9-8 season. 9-8 ain't getting you into the playoffs this year. The AFC is just too deep when it comes to these teams that have already won 7 games. 9-8 isn't going to get them in. 10-7 might not get them in. So realistically, they can afford one more loss. And depending on what happens with the rest of the division, Cleveland's still mathematically alive because if they win out and everybody else just falls apart completely, then they could get in. No one's expecting that to happen, and I'm not saying it will. But mathematically, Cleveland's still alive because no one has been able to run away with this division. Steelers had a chance to. Lamar goes down, Burrow goes down. Steelers are 4-1. The Ravens are 1-5, and here we are. If the Steelers lose to the Bills, then the Ravens take back the AFC North lead, despite losing to the Bengals. Now remember, the Bengals still have to play the Ravens again. So there's still a lot up in the air for the AFC North. The division winner may very well be 9-8. But if somebody gets to 10 wins, 9-8 isn't going to get the job done. It's just not. We went into this season, AFC North might be able to get a couple teams into the postseason. Turns out the AFC South might be the team that gets 3 teams. Where Indy still looks like they might win the division, although Daniel Jones is dealing with a partial fracture in his leg. We could see a big collapse from the Colts. And if the Texans keep winning, they might be able to complete the comeback. But Jacksonville 7-4 right now. They hold the 6th seed. Denver and the Chargers kind of battling it out for the AFC West, but Denver holds a pretty commanding lead there with 2 games. So, AFC North will get one team. It'll be whoever wins it. 9-8 might get the job done. Because you look at who the Ravens still have to play. There's no gimmies on their schedule. They play Pittsburgh twice, the Ravens again, Green Bay, New England. Like, none of those are just gimme games. Their offense hasn't looked very good. Lamar hasn't looked very good. Defensively, they've been playing better. But offensively, they're terrible right now. Lamar Jackson hasn't scored a touchdown in a month. So it's still up in the air. There is a world where the Steelers do go 9-8 and still get into the postseason because the rest of the division is just that bad. But if they, want to have a shot at a wild card spot, they can afford maybe one more loss. And again, even then, 10-7 might not get you in. So if they go to 6-6 this week, they can afford one more. I think Buffalo wins this week. Gets to 8-4, depending on what happens with Jacksonville, depending on what happens with the Chargers. Then maybe they become the top wildcard seed. But if you're the Steelers, you're rooting against Jacksonville. You're rooting against Houston. Rooting against everybody in that kind of range. Obviously rooting against the Chiefs and the Ravens. The Ravens especially, but, when it comes to Kansas City, they're 6-6 right now. Would it really shock any of us if they ran the table, went 11-6 and got in? No. Wouldn't shock me, at least. So, there's little room for error. But again, I think I've had my crash out with this team. It came this past Sunday. I'm sure I'm going to get angry at some point again this year, but right now, when your expectations are low, there is very little room for disappointment. It's pretty hard to get disappointed when I expect them to lose. So that's the mindset I'm taking into this game. So again, the Steelers 3-point underdogs, according to FanDuel, against Buffalo. Over under 45.5. I know I said 30-23, but that kind of contradicts what I was talking about with both teams wanting to run the ball. Might actually be a little bit more low scoring. Maybe like 23-20. Or it's just long drive after long drive for the most part. So I could see that kind of being the direction that things go. 45.5. I don't know. I might not touch that. I haven't had the greatest success with over-unders this year. You guys know I notoriously take the under, especially when it comes to the Steelers coming into this year, but they've actually been pretty good at covering the over. So I'm staying away from the over-under, but I will take Buffalo -3. I think that they win. I think that they win, again, rather convincingly. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but I don't think the result's ever going to be in doubt. So that will wrap up today's show. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. Usually do this one on Friday, but with Thanksgiving holiday and whatnot, and again, being busy for Black Friday, had to push it back a day. So if everybody's wondering, where this has been, just enjoying Thanksgiving, enjoying Black Friday, as I hope that you did. We'll be back with a normal schedule of shows next week. So Believe in Steelers, multiple shows, the Pump Fake, multiple shows, full Week 13 recap on Monday on the Pump Fake, full Steelers Bills recap Monday on Believe in Steelers. That'll all be in your podcast feed. So you'll get the normal helping of both the Pump Fake, the national show covering all of the NFL, as well as Believe in Steelers, covering everything that's going on in Pittsburgh. Next week, back to your regularly scheduled programming. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Again, if you're watching, please be sure to subscribe. If you're listening as a podcast, comment, subscribe, do all of that fun stuff. Appreciate you guys so much. We'll talk to you after Buffalo and Pittsburgh on Monday. See everything that went down, recap everything that went down. So be sure to tune in on Monday for the Pump Fake and on Monday for Believe in Steelers. Talk then.